Hey everyone, welcome. Today, we're diving deep into a story most of us think we know, the gospel. But what if the version you've heard is really just the first chapter of a much, much bigger story? What if it's not an escape plan, but an epic journey home? Let's get into it.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll tackle a really common way the gospel is misunderstood. Then, we'll look at what's called our lost inheritance, why we even needed a rescue in the first place. From there, we'll unpack the two parts of that rescue, redemption and reconciliation. Then, we'll explore the incredible physical hope of the resurrection. And finally, we'll see how Jesus wrapped this entire, massive story into one simple parable, the prodigal son.
All right, first up, let's talk about the version of the gospel that's out there. For a lot of people, the whole point seems to be about what happens after you die. But is that really the main event?
I mean, this is the version many of us grew up with, right? It's kind of like cosmic fire insurance. You say a prayer to get your get-out-of-hell-free card. But what if framing it that way makes us miss the entire relational heart of the story? What if we're missing the point?
And you can see the difference right here. The common view on the left is all about a change of location. You leave Earth and go to heaven. But look at the full story on the right. It's about a change in your status. You're not just moving house. You are being bought back, brought home, and fully restored to a family. It's so much bigger.
So, to really appreciate just how amazing this rescue is, you have to understand why we needed saving to begin with. And this takes us back to our starting point as humanity, a state of debt that we all inherit.
The source material uses this really powerful idea of indentured servitude. The argument is that because of Adam's sin, every human is born into a kind of spiritual debt. And it's a debt we have absolutely no way of repaying on our own. We're bound to a master we never even chose.
And who is that master? Well, pulling from the parable of the prodigal son, we get this vivid picture, the swineherd. It's an archetype, a symbol for Satan and the whole domain of sin. This isn't just about us making a bad choice. It's a legal state of bondage that we're literally born into.
So the big question is, how do you get out of that? How do you break free? Well, the rescue mission is this incredible two-part plan, and you really need both pieces to see the full picture.
The first part of the rescue is redemption, and that word means exactly what it sounds like, to buy something back. In this story, Christ steps in as our kinsman redeemer. That's an ancient term for a close relative who had the right and the resources to pay off your debt and set you free. And the price he pays to the swineherd? His own blood.
And you see this spelled out so clearly in Scripture. 1 Corinthians says, "For you were bought at a price." This isn't just poetry. The source presents this as a literal legal transaction. Our freedom wasn't just handed to us. It was purchased, paid in full, releasing us from servitude.
Okay, but being bought back is only half the story. I mean, what's the point of being set free if you have nowhere to go? That's where the second part, reconciliation, comes in. This isn't just about canceling a debt. It's about restoring a completely broken relationship with the Father.
This verse from Romans is just wow. It says that because of our sin, we were considered enemies of God. Think about that. But the cross bridges that massive divide. It transforms us from enemies into family. So think of it this way. Redemption buys us back from the swineherd, and reconciliation brings us home to the Father.
So where is this journey ultimately headed? Well, the final destination is way more real and tangible than we usually imagine. We're not talking about becoming a ghost or some disembodied spirit floating on a cloud. We're talking about the resurrection of the body.
And this is a really important distinction. There's this old Gnostic idea that our physical bodies are basically prisons we need to escape from, and that idea has kind of crept into modern thinking. But the biblical view is totally different. It says the physical and spiritual are deeply connected. The goal isn't to escape our bodies, it's to have them fully restored.
And the ultimate proof of this? Jesus himself. After he was resurrected, he wasn't some see-through ghost. He told Thomas, "Hey, touch my wounds." He said, "Look, I'm flesh and blood." He even asked for a snack and ate some fish with his disciples. He was the prototype, the first example of what a real, physical, tangible resurrection looks like.
Now, this leads to a pretty radical way of reading a famous phrase. When Jesus tells Nicodemus he must be born again, the source argues he's talking about more than just a change of heart. He's pointing to a future, literal event. In this view, being born again is the resurrection, a complete biological reboot to the original perfect human design we were meant to have.
Okay,
Let's put all these pieces together. Redemption, reconciliation, restoration. It turns out Jesus packaged this entire grand story perfectly into one single parable that you've definitely heard before.
In the story of the prodigal son, every character is a stand-in for something bigger. The younger son, that's Adam, and that's us, humanity, who took our inheritance and wasted it. The swineherd, that's our bondage to sin and Satan's domain. And of course, the father is God, just waiting for his kids to finally come home to his kingdom.
Now get this. When the son comes home, look at what the father does. These aren't just random acts of kindness. They are packed with meaning. First, the new clothes. That represents the righteousness of Christ that covers our sin. Then, the sandals. This is huge. In that culture, slaves were always barefoot. Putting sandals on his feet meant he was no longer a slave, he was a son again. And finally, the ring. That's the family seal, a sign of total authority and belonging. He's back in.
And here it is. The father says it all. This isn't just a story about a rebellious kid who finally came to his senses. It is a story of resurrection. It's about being found when you were lost. It's about being brought from death back to life. That is the gospel.
So if you take away just one thing today, let it be this. The gospel is not an escape plan. It's not about getting out of a place called hell and into a place called heaven. It's a story of returning to a person, to God the Father who is waiting with his arms wide open.
And that's really what we'll leave you with. What if this whole epic story, from being bought back from a slave master to being physically resurrected, isn't just some abstract theology? What if it's actually a personal invitation for you to find your way back to the family and the home you were created for all along?